All right, guys, what's going on? We're out here today, midsummer. It's been super hot out. When it gets super hot like this, you have two pushes of fish. One push of fish goes out super deep, the other one comes up shallow. We're fishing basically a big sand flat with some sporadic milfoil on it. And the only way we're gonna find these fish in 8 to 13 feet of water is with side imaging. So we're rolling a lot of side imaging right now, looking for fish. Me and Mitch have slip bobbers ready to go, ready to cast if we see a pot of walleyes out either side of the boat. So, you know, we're cruising around here, and side imaging's perfect when you're fishing sand like this because you can pretty much see every fish, you know, in your area here. And you know, you can see here we're pretty much on plain sand, 14 feet of water. We're cruising around. Most of the time these fish are going to relate to some kind of weed cover, whether that's just a little pocket of fringe weeds, a big tuft of milfoil somewhere in the mix, something like that. A slip bobber is a great tool to pick these fish apart. Because when they get up super shallow like this in these super gin clear lakes like we're on today, a lot of times they are kind of finicky. So, you know, when side imaging, the second we see those fish, I'll tell Mitch, like, hey, we got fish off to the left or we got fish off to the right. We cast on those fish right away. We know that those fish are either directly off our left or directly off our right when we see them. So side imaging is a great way to basically pick apart these larger flats, especially if there's very limited cover in the area. As you can see right now, we got some pockets of weeds off the right side of the boat. It's all about 11-12 feet right now, you know, and we're actively looking for fish. We're not really seeing any yet. Okay, so right there we got a pocket of fish straight off the left side of the boat. Actually off the left and right side of the boat. You see that, Mitch? Mitch lost his leech. Oh well, we're gonna fish it out. So I'm gonna back up with the trolling motor right now to just kind of hold us in position. You can see here if I scroll over here on the graph, there's some fish off the right side. I'm gonna kind of back up over to them right now. We're waiting for those bobbers to go down. You know, we know those things are right around fish. So we got a lot of confidence that we can let those bobbers sit for a little bit, and that we're gonna be around active fish. Now, one thing guys don't do a lot of is these fish are always moving around when they get up here on sand. So I always leave that side imaging running. A lot of guys will use side imaging to find fish, and they won't use side imaging to basically follow fish around, which is exactly what we want to do. So I'm always rolling that side imaging. If all of a sudden I start seeing more fish, you know, off one direction, or if I start seeing fish where they weren't before, you know, I know to recast, reposition, or do whatever I got to do to get back on those fish. And right now my bobber is basically straight off the left side of the boat, and I'm not really seeing fish there anymore, which is kind of right where they were at one point. So, you know, now I could pretty much say, like, all right, well, there's no point in leaving my slip bobber sit there, right? Honestly, we thought we were gonna get this like within the first 30 seconds. So now we're basically looking for fish again, and not really seeing anything right now.
Except I have my bobber down. I'm just
oh, Mitch has a bobber down, but he has
over
it
here.
And there we go,
And
fish on. I'm gonna spot lock in place because we know we're right around fish here. We get the net out, help Mitchell out. Not a big walleye. You guys can see how using side imaging to cover some of these larger flats like this is super, super effective. You know, there you can see every fish in the area when you're fishing sand like this. And that's not a big one there, but proves the point very well. You know, now we're spot locked in place, and boat's gonna swing around, and you know, we're gonna be around these fish, and we're gonna kind of show you how you can keep using your side imaging to basically see what side of the boat those fish are off, and you know, kind of reposition if you have to get around some new fish. You know, we're using leeches for a reason. This is bug hatch time of year when you get these first couple of real hot days of summer, and look at all the bug hatch stuck inside that fish's mouth. They're eating insect larvae, and the leech is the perfect presentation to get these midsummer walleyes to go. Right here we got some fish off the left, right off the edge of this weed bed you can see right here. Just gonna spot lock real quick, and immediately bobber down. Hook up. Power slip bobber in offside imaging. That is as cool as it gets. You know, when you kind of get dialed on where these fish are relating and how they're sitting around weeds, it should literally be that easy. You guys saw them right there on side imaging. Pitched a bobber out immediately. There we go. Nice northern Wisconsin eater. Exactly how it's all supposed to go. There we go. Not a big one there. Illustrates the point very nicely. About a 16, 17 inch. Hayward area, northern Wisconsin walleye. You know, when you get good at reading side imaging, we just did a whole video, I believe it was last week or maybe the week before, on side imaging settings. But you get good at kind of seeing what you're looking at, I mean, that really is the key. That one's all stuffed full of insect larvae too. We're gonna let that one go and get back after it.
Kaboom! You like that one?
I did like that one.
Nice. You like that better than kablammy? Or hooked up?
Look at that. You can see the weeds down there. You can see the walleye we got on. They're gonna be a net.
Go, look at that. Nice Hayward walleye. You're back in the water.
All right, guys, you know, another question we always get on YouTube or on guide trips, or kind of, you know, from a lot of questions about slip bobbers is, you know, how do you adjust your depth? Because it doesn't ever seem like we're ever adjusting our depth. Well, it's really pretty easy. You know, I fish with a lot of these 6'10" rods. You know, pretty much everyone who's walleye fishing is using like a 6 to 7 foot rod. So, you know, you have the cork section, which is basically about a foot. So this is a 6'10" rod. So let's just say this is 10 inches roughly. So what I do is I base everything basically off 6 foot increments. So 6 feet of depth would be if my slip bobber knot was right here and the jig was at the tip of my rod. Right? So I'm not slip bobbering 6 feet of water right now. Most of the stuff we're doing, so I'd base, when I'm fishing deeper stuff, like 12 to 20 feet, I'm basing it all off a 12 foot line. So my slip bobber knot's right at the reel right now. My jig is also right there. So I call that about 12 feet deep. You know, is it exact? It's probably relatively close, but I always want to be off bottom a little ways to give myself a little bit buffer. You know, I'm not trying to set within 6 inches of the bottom. I want to be a couple of feet off bottom. So if I'm fishing at 15, 12 feet's about right? So let's say like today we're fishing a lot of this kind of like 10, 12 foot stuff. So basically what I do is I move that up a couple of feet. Now I know I'm about 10 feet down, right? So in 12 feet of water, that's going to be about good. The other thing you can kind of do here is you can drop it all out, and you know your rod's about 7 feet long, or this particular rod is. So my slip bobber knot's right at the tip right now, and it's about 3 feet longer than my rod, right? So that's about 10 feet of line out at this point. Now, I run about 3 foot leads off my slip bobber, so a lot of times if I'm setting for 15 feet of water, for example, like let's say I'm fishing in 20 and I want to be down 15, what I'll do is I'll take my slip bobber knots, I basically just strip drag right there and hold my slip bobber knot so it's right at the reel like that, and my slip bobber is right in line with the reel as well. So now I know I got 12 feet of line out from my reel to the bobber, and then I got a 3 foot lead. So now I know I'm set for about 15. This is how I adjust on the fly. It's not an exact science, but you're pretty close. You know, that's one of the questions we always get asked is how do you adjust on the fly? Well, that's how we do it. We don't use a depth bob to drop down, or we don't use sonar to go back and look to see where our jig's at. This is how we do it. It's super quick, super efficient. You know, if you want to get real technical with it, yeah, you can measure the length of your rod from here to there, but honestly, most walleye rods are either 6 foot, 7 feet long, so you can kind of go basically at 6 feet from your slip bobber knot at the reel to the tip of your rod. Alright guys, there's a nice little pot of fish right off our left there. They're not very far out. You know, we pitch those bobbers quick back on them. The fish are right there. Bobber down. And we are hooked up. It doesn't get much easier than that. It's a super fun way to fish if you haven't done this before. You know, we've done a ton of power slip bobbering with, you know, just using sonar. But when fish are up on these shallow flats, nice walleye here, Mitchell. When fish are up on these shallow flats like this, you can't do sonar. Sonar is just not going to work. Those fish relate too close to the bottom. The deeper those water those fish are in, the higher tendency they have to sit higher and mark a lot easier on sonar. Where rock, for example, you might be using a lot of sonar. Shallow sand and these kind of fringe weed scenarios, we're using a lot of that side imaging. There we go, guys. Another one about the same size. about a 19-inch arid area walleye. Power slip bobber and side imaging. If you guys don't have a lot of confidence in side imaging, hopefully this video helped you out and show you what some walleyes look like on side imaging and basically how you can approach fish on these shallow flats. We're gonna let that one go.
Kaboom! Got another one here.
When you're on them, you're on them.
That is right. Good one. Nice fish on top.
Super clear water. Middle of summer, fishing like 10-12 feet.
Anyways, a couple catches ago, you saw us spot some fish and Tom dropped on them and got them right away. And then after that we kind of camped out on them, so that's always a technique too, is you're not gonna power slip bobber every single one. Camp out for a little while and give it some time, and we got a few more fish off that pod.